there's a lot of consumers out there who are not quite as concerned about energy savings as what we in the industry are. They don't care about that. They want a cozy home. They want a safe home. They want their kids to have less outbreaks of asthma. They want there not to be mold or mildew in their house. They don't want radon in there. I mean, they want a healthier home.
This is the one and only, the original podcast where you can find yours and your business's true value. You're listening to Our Value.
Brought to you by America's insulation source, IDI Distributors.
You want to hear from the best contractors, suppliers, and consultants that dedicate themselves to more than just survival in the business world?
Industry professionals that are dedicated to excellence in every aspect of their business?
Our Value has them all here to share that same motivation and knowledge with you. Tune in and grow a more successful, profitable, educated, and recognized business. Listen to the Our Value podcast to become the industry leader in your market. Find your value with Our Value.
Welcome to the Our Value podcast. On today's episode, you're going to hear an interview I did with Steve Skodak at the Building Performance Association's National Home Performance Conference in Seattle. For those of you that don't know Mr. Skodak, he is the CEO of the Building Performance Association, but more than that, this is an organization that many of us used to refer to as the Weatherization Show, and now he is really opening that to contractors of all walks of life. There's still a focus on weatherization, but there's a focus on market rate contractors, home performance of all types, multifamily building performance. It's really a great show, and I can't wait for you to hear the interview.
My background, for 34 years, I've been managing organizations that are membership-based and have some charitable component or some kind of fundraising component to it. And started my career in the YMCA, worked for a software company that developed turnkey systems for operations of nonprofits, YMCAs, YWCAs, Jewish community centers, and then worked at various other nonprofits, Optimist International, which is a civic service organization like Rotary or Kiwanis, and at the heart have always been a group of people who come together around a certain purpose and want to accomplish something. And so had a tremendous opportunity with the merging of all the different entities into what is now the Building Performance Association. Had a chance to come in as the first full-time CEO and did so 3 years ago and roughly 5 weeks before COVID hit. So, a financially challenged organization that was really trying to find its way and came in and we've had a challenging 3 years, but really are in a much better position today than what we were 3 years ago. Very excited about what we're doing right now, having our policy team and our members and our affiliates go out there and get this legislation passed, our Hope for Homes, and have the homes legislation in there, and see this billions of dollars in consumer incentives out there and hundreds of millions of dollars in training dollars to get people in our industry, to add people in our industry to build the capacity. So it's been a very exciting time.
Cool. Well, I know because we participated in the Home Performance Coalition, years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember, a couple of shows going well and a couple going okay. And the organization was kind of transitional. You could tell that. So as you said, they all came together. Well, last year in Nashville, that was actually a very cool show. I saw a lot of for-profit contractors, not-for-profit contractors, right, programs. So you've been growing the organization. Like, where was it 3 years ago versus the base that you have today?
So 3 years ago, we were communicating with maybe 7,000 to 8,000 people in our industry each week. That number's about 23,000 now of people who are out there. We take a broad view of the industry. We are an industry association, not a trade association. So we represent the industry as a whole, which includes some of the low to moderate income. So we have weather assistance program people, but we also have market rate contractors. And that really is kind of the lion's share of the work that's being done for the incentives that are coming up in the Homes Bill that was in the Inflation Reduction Act. So in the growth model, what we've done is looked at building affiliate networks at the state level. So coming into a state, working with the state energy office to develop an assessment of that state, kind of where they are. Department of Energy had funded us, as had E4 the Future had funded us for some work on kind of understanding where the marketplace was nationally. What are the challenges that are facing market rate contractors? Labor, of course, came out on top, that people were very concerned about their ability, their capacity to do the jobs. Also about the sustainability of the model of a market rate energy efficiency contractor. You know, we have an enormous amount of people going into people's homes to address HVAC and windows and insulation and all of that, but the whole home approach really has a need as we look at the energy policy for the U.S. And to that end, we see, from an association standpoint, we view that as a pretty significant need in the country, as this market rate contractor who has the capacity to do the number of homes. So if you look at President Biden's administration, if you look at each state governor's energy office, if you look at Secretary Granholm, the work that they're doing, Department of Energy, and the goals, these are some pretty aggressive numbers when you talk about the number of homes that they need to have retrofitted in order to get the kind of savings and really move toward that efficiency goal. So as an association, our focus became broadly on the industry as a whole, but very specifically, we cover this little niche of energy efficiency retrofits of existing home stocks. So when you look at that from a state energy office, that's a very small sliver. For us, it seems very broad because we're talking about the industry as a whole, not just the contractor, but the program implementers, the state energy offices who are doing it, the weather assistance program implementer. We look at all these things, it seems broad to us, but from a state energy office policy side and part of their job, it's a pretty defined widget for them. And we said, state energy offices don't have the capacity in a lot of places. There are some very well-oiled machines, state energy offices in New York, Massachusetts, California, those kinds of places where they're well-funded, they're well-organized. But when we get out to other states like, Maine or West Virginia or Nevada or any of the other states that we are building affiliate networks in, those state energy offices are much smaller. They have a really broad charge. So, they're working on nuclear energy, they're working on hydroelectric, they're working on, and here we are in this energy efficiency retrofit for existing home stock. And you look at that and you say, we can take that off their plate. We can really help them by organizing. So our model over the last couple of years has been, and more specifically last year, was to go into a state, do a state assessment of the needs for energy efficiency retrofit market there, find out is the need drawing people into the labor force, is it getting them educated, is it finding ways for them to participate in apprenticeship program. And so we've taken on all of those tasks as we've gone through and organized the state, and then we work with state energy offices to fund those on the ground in that state to do the work that meets the goals of that energy office in that given state.
That brings up something. I was talking with one of your gentlemen, Xavier, and you guys are setting up, so many of these energy offices aren't familiar with everything going on. They're not familiar with the Inflation Reduction Act and all of that. He said that you guys are setting up local organizations for contractors to work with the state energy office so that at the front end of all this, they start to know what's going on and they see the direction the state's going. They might even get input in that.
Right, for sure.
Correct?
For sure. And so part of that process as we go in and offer to expand the capacity of that state energy office through our work is through the assessment process, we find the contractors, we find the manufacturers in that given state or territory. We find all the organizations that are in there who are doing good job training programs, who are doing outreach, who are doing Justice 40 programs, HUD, any number of organizations who are working in that state, and we find out who's the dominant players in there, who are doing well, who do exceptional work but are underfunded. They don't have the capacity, but they need a little infusion. We find there is an awful lot of stellar work being done out there, but it's somewhat in obscurity because they don't have the reach. People don't know what they're doing, and we can shine a spotlight on these programs that are working really well. And then through the model, we've done grant execution by state. So we then go back to those state offices, apply for funding to support those things that are happening locally on the ground and implement those programs with people who are actually in that state. So it's not BPA coming in and hiring people and putting them on the ground. It's BPA coming in, facilitating these allied groups of manufacturers, these affiliate groups of contractors, talking to them about what they need. They know best what is needed in their market. So we facilitate that, and then we help them receive funding to boost that.
A lot of our guys, they may never see program money, but I also want them to know in terms of the organization, because you guys have not just a national and local presence, but you also have your support, like your state pages, your forums, things like that. You know, this show, I have to say that I've seen incredible breakouts every time I've come. Some of them were some of the best marketing breakouts I've seen for insulation, building performance, all of that. As you look at the organization, how do they plug into this? Where do they fit into this as a group coming in? Because you're really expanding the organization.
It's really important for us to have the market rate contractor understand the value proposition that they offer in the market, and we work to provide resources that help them market, promote, and position themselves in a marketplace to take full advantage of the fact that they're a whole home approach. You know, wealthy people get their houses done whenever they want them done. Low to moderate income, they get their homes done through weather assistance programs and some of the other indoor air quality abatement issues that HUD grantees will come in and do. But it's the market rate person and the market rate contractor that our focus was on for the legislation, which was passed this last August, which created $9 billion in consumer incentives to the people who, some of that has income, income guidelines on, but it really is hitting that targeted market of the consumer who doesn't have a ton of money, but also doesn't qualify for low-income programs, to incentivize them to make decisions about getting their house sealed and getting more efficient heating, cooling, and water heating in there.
When you look at the show itself, you know, I've seen, building envelope, blower doors, healthy homes, BPI credits.
I mean, we have, you got a couple of hundred different presentations going on.
200 breakouts.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
And you look at that because, again, we represent the industry. So some of that's going to be weather assistance program related. Some of that's going to be HUD related. Some of that is going to be dealing with, running state energy programs. But you also have market rate contractors who this is the one opportunity for them to come together and get technical expertise, also find out from marketing experts on how to market their unique proposition of a whole home approach. Also presenters here who are showing folks who may be working in people's homes all the time now what the advantages are of taking a whole home approach and how that can be very profitable to their business and how they can add that line. There are $250 million in training dollars available right now to do anything from training people for becoming energy auditors or getting people into our industry. Well, taking advantage of those dollars and creating, if you're a HVAC contractor and you're not doing whole home, there's a tremendous amount of incentive right now for you to get into whole home. Not all of your technicians have to get into whole home to take advantage of that. But you can train an energy auditor. You can go in, you can do a blower door test on homes. You can find out what the efficiencies are of it. You can start developing a sideline or a side business or partner with another contractor who does air sealing get air sealing, insulation, and then the unit for the house is, and I'm sure some of the folks out there would be upset if I didn't mention, duct sealing and those kinds of things.
I'm really surprised because I've not seen a show that has that many contractors presenting. People who have done the work. I mean, there's often you'll get, a doctor from a university. You'll get someone that's a manufacturer. I have seen more contractors talk about what works in their market at this show than any other.
Well, and it's important because it's the only place it's not the only place they can go, but it's the largest place they can go to get it with the greatest variety of successful contractors. Those contractors come in, we have an exhibition hall. There's manufacturers here showing the latest, greatest, newest technologies, but they can also then go into the classroom, and these same manufacturers who are in there could be talking about the science behind the development of the product and how they're doing it. There may be another person from their organization or their company who goes to another session who's learning how to actually do the work that's related to that. Advances in technology, advances in the way that they're actually conducting the work, and they get that hands-on here. And I have one company I talked to this morning. They have 15 employees here. It's just a significant spend for them to come and do this. But they meet as a group. They go through all of the sessions. They parse it out. They give each one of their people on their team a direction to go. All right, you're going to follow these and come back. And when they're done with the conference, they bring it back to the shop, and then they train their folks on the information that they received.
I have to mention this because this is also unique. That conference app, I love it because I can go to a session, I can pull up the session on my phone.
Write notes.
I can write notes and have the slides right there on my phone, and then I can take the slide decks back with me and go train my people.
And we have some people, when they're, some participants who come will be torn between two classes that are offered at the same time. And they'll go into those apps and they'll look at the slide deck to see the types of things that are going to be presented, if they're loaded, if the presenter has them in place already. And it helps them to make a decision, but also gives them a chance to take a peek at some of the other sessions that they were unable to attend. And we're thrilled with how it works. We went paperless about 6 years ago. As you go through that process, people are accustomed to that program and they want to see the schedule, and I think our calculation was 26,000 pages of paper that we don't print now as a result of using the app.
Outstanding.
And the app's far more nimble for the user. They're able to, like I say, write your notes in. They can download that. They can store it in their files on their devices or their desktops when they're back at the office and or back at their shop. So it's been very helpful.
I love it. So next year's Minneapolis.
Next year is Minneapolis. Yes.
Okay.
Minneapolis, we're excited to get back into Minnesota. There's a history there in our industry. They've done some pretty amazing things there in Minnesota. We've tried to move the show around. Seattle this year, West Coast. We've not had an enormous amount of reach in the West Coast historically. When you look at where most of the population is in the U.S., is East Coast, within a couple hundred miles from the Atlantic Ocean. And getting out here into the West Coast and seeing some of the things that the contractors are doing here, some of the things, in particular when you're dealing with Pacific Northwest, has a lot of issues that when you start talking about sealing homes is exciting. So when you get back into Minnesota, you're going to be dealing with a lot of cold climate discussions up there with that. And you tend to draw, our group travels. I mean, during COVID, we went virtual for 2 years. We came back out last year, was our first live year. We had 1,600 people in attendance on that. We have an every other year agreement with Weather Assistance Program to sponsor. So they're with us 1 year, and then they take their participants to Energy Out West on the other years. And so in a non-Weather Assistance Program year, which brings more of their folks in. This is a Weather Assistance Program year, and we recently, over the last year, made a deal and created a partnership with HUD to have their grantees attend. So we have about 600 to 700 of their grantees here this year. So we have about just over 2,500 people at this show. So to go from 1,500 last year, some people couldn't travel still because of COVID last year. Some government budgets did not allow people to travel. So this is really our first year where it's unencumbered by COVID protocol. We even had health screenings last year at our program. Don't have those this year. City of Seattle County does not mandate that. So we're starting to see this post-COVID world of people getting together. That, coupled with the passing of the legislation with all the incentives, has really created a buzz in our industry that's justified. This industry is going to make a huge difference in energy policy for the U.S. If we can look at home stocks and retrofit homes and get a 25 to 30% savings in fuel consumption, and we're fuel agnostic. We don't care which fuel it is as long as you consume less. Anytime we go into a home and you're able to do air sealing and get the insulation where it needs to be, get a blower door test on it to find out about the leakage and what you gained on it, which leads us to all the measured model discussion. Is it kind to call it a discussion? But as we look at that segment of getting homes efficient, that's a huge energy savings. And when you start talking about a carbon footprint, whatever people's politics are, whatever their view is of energy policy in the U.S., I think we can all agree that consuming less while maintaining the same habits. I mean, people still have the same, they want their house warm, and they want it warm in the winter, and they want it cool in the summer, and they don't want mold growing, and they want healthy indoor air, and the consumer's behavior can remain pretty consistent, but retrofitting a home, getting it air sealed, getting it taken care of, 25, 30% savings. And I don't think there's anything else in the U.S. from an energy policy standpoint that can compare to that on the value if someone's looking at carbon reduction, or they're looking at fuel consumption in general, or production or acquisition. Couple that with renewable energy, nuclear and hydro and all of those. There's some really good gains that we can get in reducing dependency on fossil fuels, while still realizing that in some parts of the country, natural gas is a very effective and affordable. They can consume less, though, by addressing the house and mitigating leakage.
Yeah, I've always been a fan. And I'm going to wind up writing a blog about it, but adding solar to me isn't necessarily green, only because I can just make an excuse to use more. And whereas when we fix the building envelope, we are truly cutting usage. Then I can,
no matter what you do.
I can still generate with solar. I'm not saying don't generate.
Right.
I have homes with solar, but my issue is if we cut the demand, we're really making the difference.
A big difference.
So now I want to go back to Minneapolis. So here we are in Seattle. Minneapolis is next year. Do you expect that to be a larger show, or about the same size, or?
It will be a non-WAP year, so Weather Assistance Program folks won't be there. At the pace it's going, and with the information, we think a lot of the attraction that's coming into this has to do with the rapid pace in which, so the legislation led to the incentives, which led to a lot of questions. People had a lot of questions. How do I take advantage of that? How do I, as a market rate contractor, take advantage of all these incentives that come out in there? So we see that part of the market increasing in attending the show, and I would anticipate Minneapolis, I'm sure we would see probably the same numbers, because we'd have the weather assistance program agreement we have it wouldn't be a weather assistance program year, but I still see the program growing, and so we'll see probably these kind of numbers again next year.
But the influx would probably be market rate contractors.
Right. The influx would be market rate contractors, would be additional HUD grantees, would be additional implementers on the ground in areas like workforce development.
I think that'll be a good year, though. If you get workforce development, because again, you said it earlier, we're all struggling to find people.
It is everything.
So if it's workforce development, then also indoor air quality related, and then on top of that, what we haven't even brought up, you can come here and get certain BPI certifications, correct?
For sure, yeah.
Well, what better thing? I can have my people certified to operate a blower door. I can learn how to market it. I can find out what the state's doing in terms of giving the money away and what you guys have coming next.
It is a gathering unlike any other in our industry, just from the sheer volume of people that you're going to come in contact with who have knowledge in unique specific areas. And also, if you're a person at the higher end of your educational journey in envelope work, we are very conscious of the fact that we're going to offer certain sessions that are poorly attended, but they're going to have people who can't get this information because it's elevating for the well-educated, well-informed person. You still have to take it up a notch. You still have to continue to improve their relationship. Much like if you're in a Business 101 class at a university, there's going to be a theater of people with a professor. When you get to the PhD programs, there's going to be, 2 and 3 to the professor. We still offer those sessions that allow people to continue their journey, to tease out new ideas, to challenge each other on what the assumptions are in the industry and how they handle it. Then you have an awful lot of entry-level folks who are coming in and learning the skills, getting their certifications, or their credentialing for their certification. And then you have people who are learning about how to make their business profitable, because nobody goes into business to not be profitable. We understand that. There has to be a value proposition to being a whole home contractor. And so we put a fair amount of emphasis on making sure that those tracks are in place that educate business owners on how do I communicate to the people I'm talking to about ways for us to serve their homes and their needs. There's a lot of consumers out there who are not quite as concerned about energy savings as what we in the industry are. They don't care about that. They want a cozy home. They want a safe home. They want their kids to have less outbreaks of asthma. They want there not to be mold or mildew in their house. They don't want radon in there. They want a healthier home. At the end of the day, that envelope sealing and getting things tuned right is all about the comfort and the quality of the living experience in that space. That's what the consumer's interested in.
Amen to that.
And we have to, when I first came in the industry and I was talking to different sage, the people who'd been in the industry forever, one of them made the comment, I was coming from a contractor group, and they're like, are we only concerned about profits? And I said, if you're a business owner, you are. Are you only concerned about that? No, but you are. That's what you went into business for. And so it needs to be a profitable space. We need to be able to articulate to the consumers what differentiates a whole house approach to someone who's going to come in and box swap. And if we can add to those numbers of whole home approach, there will be a distinct separation. There will be a bar between the people who are going to come in and do distress work and the people who are going to come in and do whole home approach and create that cozy, safe, comfortable environment.
I have to say one thing. So a lot of people may not know the term box swap. I came out of HVAC.
Sorry.
So I'll tell for all our insulators, that's a person that does an air seal and shows up and adds 3 inches and expects that to change somebody's life.
Yeah.
It's you can't just throw a little more insulation on. That's if you've got air leaking through there, you got to stop the leaks. And so I love that. So now, Minneapolis is next year. Do you have the following year already mapped out?
Following year's Austin, Texas.
Austin. Hey, I'll be able to drive.
Austin was, so the first year of COVID, we were due to be in New Orleans. And that show was canceled and we went virtual. We turned that program around in about 6 weeks to go from live to virtual. And the following year, we were scheduled to be in Austin. And we were allowed to have the conference, but our participants were not ready to return. So what we did is we rebooked Austin. As opposed to canceling it, we rebooked it and deferred that booking into the next. And we're excited about that. And then we're currently shopping what the next
So 24 Minneapolis,
Yep.
25 Austin. I don't want to let you go before asking any other new things for the organization. Are you guys looking down the road to expand, anything?
We are an awful lot of our work right now. So we have an amazing policy team. Carousel Rinaldi, who leads our policy team through her company, Andil.
She's a gem.
Yeah, she's amazing. And her team, she's Skip and Sabine and the whole crew there. She's expanded her team quite a bit. The space is really looking to them as the authorities in this industry. So BPA, Andil, through that work, essentially wrote this legislation, which was the Hope for Homes. It was essentially Homes Act for a long time, which was incentives to consumers to energy efficiency retrofit their homes. And then during COVID, we had a HOPES component of that. HOPES for Homes had training dollars on there to do remote training, online training, to create people who are energy auditors and do this to add to the numbers that we have working on solving these. That became less online as COVID waned, and that bill ended up getting rolled into the infrastructure, the Inflation Reduction Act in August of last year, and was passed with the $9 billion in consumer incentives and $200 million in training dollars for our industry. And then there was also IIJA, which some people refer to as bipartisan infrastructure law, which also had millions of dollars in there for training for energy auditors.
Well, and while you guys have never said it, I would probably throw into that the work, Skip, Kara, that you guys did on the Inflation Reduction Act, I really believe that helped pull through the 179D, the 25C at a higher rate. Yeah. The 25C before you guys went to work on this bill was almost nothing. It was, I shouldn't say that. It was $500, but that was at 10% of the material cost. Right. And so I think the raising of the 25C, the raising of the 45L, the 179D, the Homes bill helped pull all that through.
For sure. That all became part of the discussion at that, and we've focused on the home again. Fuel neutral. A key part of IRA was electrification models. Those were things we can be generally supportive of, but they were not things necessarily that were in legislation that we were advocating. But as a package, when you start looking at what energy policy is in the U.S., there's still this enormous chunk out there that ends up in market rate, low, moderate income retrofits, envelope work. Our team has been the voice at the table for years. And this goes back to previous iterations of the organization. Our organization was made out of 5, 6, 7 different organizations along the years who have been fighting for these things. And then to see it passed in the new organization and then see the kind of growth. And then what we found after that legislation passed is that Department of Energy is going to give guidance to state energy offices. So there are 56 energy offices, states and territories. And they're going to give guidance to those states, and those states have to implement. Well, some states have very robust state programs. Look at the state of Massachusetts. Mass Save has a very large amount of money committed to energy efficiency. How do we make sure that these things get braided properly? So you got this federal funding come in, there's state, there may be local incentives that are in there. How do we make sure all this braids together? And that's where Department of Energy will be giving guidelines to state energy offices. State energy offices will then be going and setting up basically the rules of the program or the guidelines for the program and then implementing those. We have been working with, advocating and encouraging through our communication with the contractor network, our allied contractor network by state, how their state can take advantage of that and have helped raise that voice. So the contractors on the ground's voice is coming through our affiliate networks in our state BPA affiliate groups. And that information is then informing comments that come to Department of Energy, who then are giving the guidance back to the state. And then we're working with State Energy Office to implement those by giving them the feedback and convening those groups of stakeholders, contractors, and program implementers who are in that space. And so we talk about the new things, or the focus of what BPA is getting those state networks in place. A lot of folks would think of an affiliate network as more of a traditional chapter model. We have a state chapter of the Building Performance Association. We believe that there's some challenges with the traditional chapter model. This is not a pay dues at the state level and elect officers and have your meetings on Tuesday at lunch and have a presenter. I mean, these are affiliate networks that are really talking about how do we attract new candidates? How do we get them into programs? How do we get them into programs that educate them on how to get into our industry? In some states, we've introduced try before you buy 12-week programs where wage of the individual is underwritten for 12 weeks while they try out the job. While there's dollars there to train that individual, we have programs that are done through grants we do at the state level to draw people in, do job fairs, bring them in, have collateral for them, get them in the green economy jobs to bring them in. We also went through Department of Labor and created an apprenticeship program. So we have a non-union apprenticeship program that allows contractors to have a prevailing wage and apprenticeship program with individuals in a non-signed, non-signatory shop format that allows them to take advantage of work that requires there be an apprenticeship and a prevailing wage.
Who can they contact for that? Because the apprenticeship program obviously would be very attractive to many people. Yeah. So who do they reach out to on something like that? They
can contact, our website's building-performance.org. But if you go online, look at the Building Performance Association website, there's links on there for our workforce development, or they can reach out to us. I'm happy to field the calls. Our director of outreach is Zave Walters.
And Zave's been a contractor for a long time. Great guy to reach out to.
Zave started in New Jersey as a contractor, has worked for years in this space, is a great trainer, is a well sought after trainer. Really has a keen understanding and a good network of people that really helped inform his understanding of the marketplace. We had a chance to hire him about a year. He's just over, it was a year in November, to come on and kind of lead these efforts. We brought in Maria and we brought in a data analyst to begin looking at an awful lot of what goes on in the states and assessing what they need has to do with data analysts. We bring Ruben in for this. So we've assembled this state coordination team, and we're in the process of, if anyone's looking for work right now, we're looking at an administrator for our state outreach. We're also looking for another state outreach coordinator, so a person who's out in the field doing this. Maria Lewis, who came on with us, had been in Syracuse, working for the city of Syracuse. She's been very active in the past month. Identifying and helping Puerto Rico better understand what their needs in the direction that they're going to go. An island has a very different set of needs, especially one that doesn't really require air conditioning or heating. So you get into a place like that, and she's working with them to identify. They do a lot of solar water heating. They do a lot of battery pack work. So we're working with them to help identify really what the scope of the work is. And they really just need people doing energy efficiency work. They need the workforce training and development. We're spending a lot of time on workforce development in most states, helping set up models to attract, retain, long-term these folks. And then also we'll have an increasing amount of information coming out on how to then transition to have your own company, to run that company, to articulate that value proposition. There is absolutely no way the number of contractors we have today, no matter how big they get, are going to be able to do the amount of work that's to be done out there. So we need every contractor in the market to expand. We need new contractors to come in. We need them to expand. And then we might start talking about reaching some of the numbers that various administrations around the country want to see.
I want to put some numbers to that because I've talked to people when we were doing 1.4, 1.5 million houses, we barely had enough labor to eke by. And yet, I know from my background, production homes, my previous employer, they would go do 2 houses a day per crew with fiberglass. They just go hang bats. So when we talk about having enough labor, we barely had enough when that crew could do 2 houses in a day. If I'm going to retrofit that same 1,500 to 1,800 square foot home, it's going to take that crew of 2 to 3, maybe even 4 days, depending on the vac out, depending on a crawl space, depending on everything else. So now we're saying instead of 2 houses a day, it's going to take them 8 times that amount of time in order to complete 1. I totally agree with your point. We are so understaffed, under-contracted in this industry. It's incredible.
It is.
We have 110 million.
It is mind-boggling. When you start thinking of, the U.S. has faced labor shortages in the past. I mean, in the history of our country, before our country was a country, labor shortages happened routinely. And we always solved that through migration. We always reached out to people around the world and said, we have jobs, we're looking for people who can do these jobs, we look for people who are interested in these. We are going to have to do that as a country, and this is not to really soapbox this too much, but the reality is we've always solved labor problems in the U.S. through migration. It's important for us. We have a program, Zave just did a training up in Maine for some new Mainers, people who had migrated to Maine, were asylum seekers. We did a class there. He did it in English. We brought in 2 interpreters, one in French and one in Portuguese, because the attendees in the class spoke French, some spoke Portuguese. So you have one class. These folks had job offers at the end of classes. They're contractors who want. So these people coming in, learning about the work, wanting to understand the building science. Some have backgrounds as electricians or heating and cooling, or in other countries that are in severe distress and seeking asylum in the U.S. And we are going after those groups of folks for training to say, choose us as an industry. This is a great way to make a living. It has a progressive wage. It's entry level. I mean, you and I are in the industry. I mean, you could be an association exec, you could be a podcast host and company owners and run. I mean, there are so many areas that when you get into this industry, there's so many directions you can go with it. And there will be those times when you come in that you got to crawl, you're in crawl spaces, you're in attics. That's the work. And that's where the education happens, and then the blower door tests and doing the energy audits. And the more they start hearing from the consumer of, you cannot believe how comfortable I am in my house now. You cannot believe how much my allergies are down. This has been life-changing, because we've all seen those circumstances where somebody has an audit done on their house, they get the work done, and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could be this comfortable in my house.
I would have done this years ago.
Would have done it years ago.
We were going to stop getting sick.
So if you're crawling in the attic or you're in the crawl space and you're doing this work, and then you hear that consumer talk about the life-changing difference of the comfort and the coziness of their house and the quality of life in that, it's infectious. And when we talk to people at this conference, I mean, we have 2,500 people at this conference, and you can talk to almost any of them about, tell me a story about what got you excited. Why did you want to come into this industry? What got you here? And we see new faces every year. We have hundreds of new people here who are contractors, and they said, oh, my cousin asked me to come help him on a crew, and I went out and I did this. And then I started looking at what we were doing, and this is the real deal. This is making a difference. This is really serving the consumer. This is doing something good on a global level. This is doing something, I like the work. And then you find out how quickly those people progress through the ranks. Well, then I was a shift supervisor. Then I started going out and I started doing the audits. And then I started working with managing the crews. And then pretty soon I had my own company. And, we rolled one truck, and then next thing I knew, we're rolling 10 trucks or 15. And well, then we figured out we were having a hard time finding a reliable insulation company. So we started our own insulation company. So we had our air sealing company. We had our insulation company. We had our own electricians, plumbers for doing the heating and ventilation. We started doing duct replacement. We started doing, and you start hearing about these growing businesses that take this whole home approach, and it's endless. I mean, if there is a desire for somebody to be of that mindset of creating that business and moving it, or if they just really enjoy the work and are good at it, the career opportunities are amazing.
I would add to that also. I heard something from a totally different perspective, because it pays well. But I'm not going to tell you, you're going to make beyond Google money. No. But I'm amazed that some of the people that get laid off in some of these other industries are people that are behind a desk. And then they came to us during COVID. They hit the end of the day and they said the way that they feel compared to when they worked a desk, they sleep at night. They go home, they take a shower, they rest. And it's been life-changing for some of them.
We used to talk about, with the contractors, they talk about, we shower at the end of the day, not at the beginning of the day. When they talk about the differentiation between being in the trades or working with your hands versus being in an office. And there is something very fulfilling about getting your hands on a project and start to finish seeing something happen. We showed up and the house was in disarray. We brought out an agency to do barrier mitigation to get the roof fixed and the door back on its hinges. And then we went in and we did this and we did that, and we did the other, and they passed those houses and they got the kids in the truck and they point,
That's it right there.
And if you talk to their kids are like, Dad's always pointing out all the jobs they did, or, Mom always says, oh, our company did this and we did this and I did that addict. And it's very exciting to hear those stories of people taking pride in seeing things in their community that they made a difference in. And those changes have lasting effects on those homeowners, and health effects and just comfort and quality of life. And there are few things you can do in life that really provide you that kind of feedback, and what you're doing is that helpful. So
I agree. Well, as you can tell, I love the organization.
we appreciate it.
I look forward to getting this out to our people. And guys, seriously, you got any questions at all on the Building Performance Association, reach out to Zave, reach out to these guys. Come to a show. Don't miss out. Come to a show and see what you think of the organization. Quite frankly, they're doing more for you than you probably realize. And if it's in your area and they're working locally, like the local offices, join in, become part of the program. It's going to help you grow your business. So with that, thanks for listening. Be sure and share this with other contractors in your area, and we look forward to talking to you next time.